ये बोलते कि रोटेट द डिवाइस बोल रहा है ये। ओरिएंटेशन लॉक है। हाँ
Please, could I have everybody come and sit down and start becoming a little more silent? Thank you.
हो गया।
I will now hand over the mic to Professor John, who will start our program.
Thank you, my friend. So I would like to welcome you to MSU, Michigan State University Taipei, Lee Tuchen, Sargansen, Habib Swagato, India, and so we're very happy to have you. We're looking forward to more people coming. Some of my students will eventually arrive also from my Buddhism class. And so if you see them, please reach out to them. They're very friendly. They're fantastic students. They're excited that you're here too. They've been studying Buddhism and Dr. Ambedkar and his movement for the past, Buddhism for the past semester, Dr. Ambedkar for the past few weeks. So they have some background. They're looking forward to hearing from you. Dr. Santosh Rao and I were going to talk on Thursday here at MSU about the Ambedkarite movement and things like that. So, yeah, very nice to have you here. For those of you who don't know me, I teach here at Michigan State University in the Religious Studies Department. I've been going to India since 1995. I've lived in mostly Maharashtra for almost 4 years, a little over 4 years. And my main research now is on transnational Buddhism and Ambedkarite migration. So I've been speaking to Ambedkarite communities and talking with people in Japan, Dubai, India, UK, Western Europe, US. And so this is really part of my research and talking with people like you. In fact, a number of the people in the community have been my conversation partners for almost a decade since I've been here at MSU. So a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you who are changing costumes, I think there are a number of people now in the audience who know where the changing room is. That's there. If you're looking for restrooms, if you head back in that direction, there's a little bit of a ramp that you can walk up. Take a small left, small right. There's restrooms there. There's also restrooms back in the corner over there. So I think without further ado, I'll hand it back to Maitreya and we can move forward. So great to see you all.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Maitreya Vankere, alongside Mr. Ambedkar, in today's program. Thank you for being able to join us this morning to celebrate the 134th Ambedkar Jayanti. A general overview of our program includes our prayers and an interactive panel discussion until lunch, followed by cultural activities in the setting. Today's event is jointly organized with Michigan State University and the Ambedkar Association of North America. The Ambedkar Association of North America, also known as ANA, was formed in the year 2008 and with the aim to uplift the lives of people who belong to the underprivileged caste in India. ANA's slogan is to educate, agitate, and organize. Our members primarily come from the Bahujan community in India and are committed to a vision of a world free from caste apartheid, religious intolerance, and injustice. We work with all Ambedkar Americans to achieve dignity and justice through organizing policy innovation, transformative education, and cultural programming. We work within the United States and help. We do many events, training programs, and we have a series that reach thousands of families in the United States and around the world, involving our members and our outlook for change. We build. We work on both secular and faith-based initiatives, but have a core commitment to the socially engaged possibilities of Ambedkar Buddhism and all around the world. To know more about Anna, please visit www.annausa.org, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Or if you have any questions, please email us at annausa@gmail.com. Now, I would like to invite Professor John and Dr. Rao to the stage to elect the and venerate Dr. Ambedkar. You guys have to elect him. I would like also to plead and all of the board members and please come up stage. Okay, so now I would like to invite the Dominanda to do the Vandana prayer. Before we begin the prayer, I would like everybody to silence their cell phones and please take a seat so that we can all understand.
Namo Buddhaya. Good morning. First of all, I welcome all of you to this beautiful audience. First of all, thank you, Brother John, for organizing this beautiful celebration. And then another professor who came from Harvard Divinity School. Most welcome, thank you, brother. And all the brother and sister, thank you and Jai Hind. And first start with the chanting prayer. So follow me with the Buddha Vandana first, and then the 5 precepts. Okay. First say Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Dutiyampi Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Tatiyampi Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. I go down with the
Enlightened One. I bow down with the teachings of the Enlightened One. I bow down the Sangha, the noble disciple of the Buddha. First, and the second, and the third time. Now, 5%. Panatipata Vedamani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami Adinadana Vedamani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami Kamesu Miccachara Vedamani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami Musavada Vedamani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami Sura Mediya Majjapadakana Vedamani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. I promise to observe the 5 precepts. The first one is not to kill, not to harm any living being. I bow down. I promise to take oath not to take anything what is not belong to me or what is not given to me. The third one is I promise to take the precept not to do any adultery. Number 4, I'm not going to lie anything whatsoever. And then number 5, I'm not taking any intoxicating drugs or alcohol. This is the 5 precept and then the teaching of the Buddha. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante, for the prayer. Now I would like to invite Mrs. Archana and Mrs. Roshni to the stage to recite the Bhim Stuti. The Bhim Stuti is recited to praise the qualities and words as well as show respect to Dr. Ambedkar.
Sakam vicham vidurannanam devalopam suchiva vimalachakuru gamirakosa gauravandan sukhaya abhayachittam nibhayakamam Suradhamam supemam viratarajam sujananetam bhimaravam sarami bhimaravam sarami bhimaravam sarami. Bhim Stuti. Divyavaratu sadhu varanatu adyakulavushanatu bhimaraja sakala vidyapati jnana satsangati shastra shasanamati buddhi teja Pankajanarvara Radhasvajana Uddhara Bhagavanta Amsakara Bhakta Kaja Chavadara
Thank you so much, Mrs. Archana and Mrs. Roshni, for presenting these songs for us. Now I would like to call upon Dr. Rashid to the stage to speak on the significance of today.
But as a fellow admirer of visionary whose ideas continue to shape the moral and intellectual fabric of our society. Today, we commemorate a truly monumental occasion, the 134th birth anniversary of Dr. Ambedkar, a luminary whose vision continues to shape the fabric of modern India and beyond. We are all here because we recognize the significance of this day. Yet, I am mindful that some among us, especially those who are not from India, or those who are not well acquainted with the history of India, still discovering the vastness of Dr. Ambedkar's contributions. And so, let me begin by introducing you to the man whose intellect, courage, and relentless pursuit of justice have made an indelible impact on the world. Born on April 14, 1891, into the Mahal a community deemed untouchable at that time, by the rigid caste hierarchy, Baba Sahib did not just witness discrimination, he lived it. Yet he refused to be shackled by it. Instead, he wielded education as his weapon, securing degrees from Columbia University and the London School of Economics, ultimately becoming the chief architect of Indian Constitution and then India's first law minister. But let us not reduce him just to the titles. He was a jurist who redefined justice, a philosopher who questioned dogma, an economist who understood inequality, a historian who reclaimed his narratives, a social reformer who envisioned a casteless society, and most relevant to my own field, a public health champion who recognized that social justice and health equity are inseparable. Dr. Ambedkar recognized something that many policymakers, even today, fail to grasp. Public health is not just about hospitals and doctors. It is about addressing the social and economic necessities of the population. He knew that the nation's health is intricately tied to the well-being of its population, especially the laborer. It was this vision that led him during his tenure in the Bombay Legislative Council, 1927 and 1939, between those time periods, to push for 8 hours per day, maternity benefits, and equal pay for women. All groundbreaking reforms in pre-independent India at that time. Under his influence, the Factories Act of 1934 mandated better working conditions, regulated work hours, and improved sanitation standards in workplaces, fundamentally changing labor laws in India at that point of time. He understood that poor working conditions were not just an economic problem, but a public health crisis. He fought for fair wages, arguing that economic deprivation leads to malnourishment, diseases, and ultimately social stagnation. Recognizing the socio-economic implications of overpopulation, he advocated for birth control, not as a goal measure, but as a tool of empowerment, enabling individuals to make informed choices for better quality of life. One of the most powerful examples of Ambedkar's commitment to public health was the March Satyagraha of 1927. At the time when Dalits were forbidden from accessing public water sources, Ambedkar led thousands to the Chandar tap in Mahad, asserting their right to drink water from it. But this wasn't just about water. It was about health, human dignity, and the right to live free from disease and social exclusion. Clean drinking water, proper sanitation, and hygienic living conditions were, to him, as fundamental as political rights. Even when drafting the Indian Constitution, he ensured that public health was embedded as a state responsibility under the National Principles of State Policy in Article 47. This article emphasizes the state must improve public health and nutrition for its people. As a public health scholar, I see his impact everywhere. From debates on universal healthcare policies ensuring equitable access to vaccines, his principles still guide us. Baba Saheb's legacy is not a relic of the past. It is a clarion call for the present and the future. This is why today's celebration is not just significant, it is necessary. Traditional birth anniversary celebrations often consist of formal speeches and rituals. But Ambedkar Jayanti is no other than celebration. It is vibrant fusion of intellect and culture. Around the world, Ambedkarites honor him by blending scholarly discourse with artistic celebration, and today's program reflects that spirit as well. In the first half, we will delve into stimulating discussions with Dr. John Gray and Dr. Santosh Rao as they unpack Dr. Ambedkar's vision of nation building and transformation. In the later half, we will celebrate with music, dance, and cultural performances, a testament to Baba Saheb's belief in the power of education, art, and collective joy. Before I step aside, I must extend my deepest gratitude to Michigan State University, Dr. John Gray, and Dr. Santosh Rao, and the entire team of Ambedkar Association of North America for their fabulous efforts in bringing this event into the light. Finally, let me return to a thought Baba Saheb with us. One that is profoundly relevant to the ongoing global discourse on public health and social justice. On 15th September 1938, in the Bombay legislature, while debating the provisions of the Industrial Dispute Bill and demonstrating how the bill's clauses would undermine laborers' rights to unionize and their right to strike, even though that bill was provision to treat both employer and employees on the par, he said, and I quote, "What we want is not equality. What we want is equity. Equality is not necessarily equity. This equity cannot be produced if you propose to treat the strong and the weak, the rich and the poor, the ignorant and the intelligent on the same footing." End quote. As we strive for better public health policies, let us remember that equity, not just equality, must be our guiding principle. Only then we can build the just and inclusive world that Baba Saheb envisioned. Thank you so much and Jai Hind.
Thank you so much to Dr. Prashant for talking about the significance of today. It is a very important reason why we're celebrating Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's birth. At this time, I would like to welcome the dignitaries for today. I will be first introducing them, and I will call them on stage. First, we have Professor John Q. Boynton. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce John Boynton, a distinguished scholar specializing in devotional Hinduism and South Asian studies. His current research traces the legacies of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's conversions to Buddhism in 1956 as they play out among his followers within India and beyond. John Boynton brings extensive academic expertise to his role at Michigan State University, with a focus on West Central India and popular devotional Hindu traditions. His acclaimed book, Shared Devotion and Shared Food, examines caste dynamics within Bhakti traditions, and he has also co-edited volumes in Bhakti traditions and their interactions with the diverse communities. With the transnational research approach, John Coyne explores Buddhist networks and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's legacy, contributing significantly to scholarly networks and directing efforts to develop the Bhakti virtual archive. Dr. Coyne continues to influence students here at MSU and brings awareness to Ambedkarite Buddhism. I would also like to introduce Dr. Santosh Rao. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is also my pleasure to introduce Dr. Santosh Rao, also known as Maitrivir Nagarjuna, an eminent Dhamma teacher and scholar of Buddhist aesthetics and philosophy. Dr. Santosh is a distinguished scholar in Buddhist aesthetics and philosophy, and an organizer with the broader Asian networks of engaged Buddhism. He has joined the EFL University in Hyderabad as an assistant professor and combines this work with his role as deputy chairman of Nagarjuna Training Institute and the co-founder of the Baba Saheb Ambedkar Philosophical Society at Nagaloka in Nagpur. He also co-founded the National Network of Buddhist Youth and is also a research fellow at the Harvard Divinity School. Dr. Rao continues to influence youth today in the Ambedkarite Buddhism too. Now I would like to invite Akanksha Manwadkar and Vasundhara Satpar to present Professor John Coyne and Dr. Santosh Rao with the bouquet. And the board members would also like to present mementos to Professor John and Dr. Rao. I would also like to introduce Dr. Morgan Shipley, who could not be here today due to personal reasons, but he is an associate professor here at MSU. His research projects, teaching, and work relates to focus on understanding mystical and historic new religions that highlight spirituality as opposed to institutional religiosity, positioning individuals and groups who increasingly identify as spiritual but not religious, and situating the nature and manifestations of secular spirituality. I would like Dr. John to take the bouquet and memento on his behalf.
So I know that Dr. Shipley would like to join us today. He had sort of a family situation that sort of beyond his control, so he sends his regards, and he was looking forward to meeting you, but unfortunately he wasn't able to come. I'll convey this to him. I'm sure he'll be very excited to receive it.
Okay, so now we're going to head on to the interactive panel discussion, but I would like to introduce the topic before we start talking. The topic we'll be talking about today is fraternity and Buddhism in Dr. Ambedkar's time and ours. We'll talk about the history of Ambedkar at global diasporas, two ideas of fraternity in Dr. Ambedkar's writings, and what fraternity could mean especially for diaspora Ambedkarites. I would also like to call upon Dr. Rob and Dr. John to come back to the stage so we can start the discussion.
You sure? Because I think it's going to be for an hour or something. If you want to say it, if you would like to say it on
Is that right? I know being on the stage in some ways we're easy to see, but we'll also we have to turn around to look at the slides and things. So I think it's worth to hear about. And actually, I'm used to being a teacher, and we're always stuck standing right here. So this is sort of comfortable for you, and I hope Dr. Rob is okay for you. Okay, great. So it's great to be with you all. What we're going to do is say a few words about some of my research and how I want to situate the idea of fraternity. And Dr. Rob is also going to talk about that and some additional topics related to Buddhism. And then we have some questions for you, because this is the interactive part. We have some questions that we would like you to be considering as part of this idea of fraternity and Buddhism in not only Dr. Ambedkar's time, but our being us here right now. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about Dr. Ambedkar's time years, about diasporas, about different meanings of the word fraternity. So as Ambedkarites, you're familiar with the word fraternity, although at least in my impression, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think fraternity is not the central word that a lot of people are often using. Equality, definitely. Liberty, maybe not so much, but fraternity, at least as I've talked with a lot of Ambedkarites, I'm going to say probably upwards of a couple hundred Ambedkarites around the world, fraternity is not the first word that comes to their mind. So we'd like to talk a bit about that, about what this means. In Dr. Ambedkar's writings and on Ambedkarites today. We'll have then some questions for you, and then we'll have some time for Q&A with us. Sound good? All right. Yeah. Good. Please, why don't you say a few words?
I also want to congratulate Anna for organizing this beautiful anniversary of Dr. Ambedkar and wish you best wishes on the day that brought all of us here, and because of him, we are able to communicate to the world what he thought, what he communicated, what he stands for. Because of him, I'm able to speak with places like Howard and communicate with the larger world bodies and the communities across the globe. So, congratulate Anna for organizing this beautiful event. I also want to thank Professor John for hosting such a grandiose venue and beautiful hall. I know institutionally how it's difficult to get venues, and having celebration or anniversary celebration of Dr. Ambedkar in campus matters a lot, because after all, Dr. Ambedkar was a great educationist, and apart from all his great achievements, he shares major share in the university. So I congratulate him. I also wanted to congratulate spiritual chairman of Michigan State University to allowing and hosting an celebration at Michigan State University. So congratulate all of you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Dr. Ambedkar obviously needs no introduction from me. What we want to do is just contextualize a bit what we're going to start with. So we're thinking about Dr. Ambedkar as an economist, attorney, statesman, scholar, activist, and then also talking about Buddhism and the conversion to Buddhism. I teach religious studies. I'm talking about religion all the time. People think very often we start with religion, it means a set of beliefs and doctrines and rituals and texts and things. That's what religion is. Dr. Ambedkar, you know, does not do it that way. Religion is plugged into all of these other things. As an attorney, statesman, activist, everything. Religion activates part of that. So when we're talking about Buddhism, we're thinking about Buddhism in a very particular way.
Yeah, and as rightly said, we also adopted this mode of interaction with you so that it's a community event, and we are conscious what we are doing here, why we chose certain slides, why we have selected certain topics. That relates directly to Dr. Ambedkar's life, because it was, I think, 1955. Mid of 1955, Dr. Ambedkar invited his close associates at 26 Aligarh Road, where he was staying in Delhi. And the next phase of election was about to come, that's the second election in India. And he also wrote the manifesto of Republican Party of India just before this meeting. And he called the close meeting in 26 Aligarh Road at Delhi, and he proclaimed or publicly shared his wish that I'm going to embrace Buddhism. He did not declare the place, but that's what he told his close associates. And his close associates were disappointed. He said that, Sir, why are you bringing dharma in between when we are going to have election? And probably RBI will win and our problem will be solved. Dr. Ambedkar did voice what Kanwais and all said, Gambhir Awaz, or in serious voice, he said that, no, if I do not do the last gift, the final gift, that is the culmination of our vision, I think my revolution is not complete. Because caste is not just a political or social problem, but the notions of inequalities goes quite deep in the mind of India, and that's what I need to know. So what was trying to annihilate in 1936, annihilation of caste, that's what he pragmatically tried to do in practice by embracing Buddhism to establish deep fraternity. That was the vision that Dr. Ambedkar, that's a very important story, probably how that unfolded into Ambedkar and Buddhism, the way he thought when he jumped at Delhi.
Right, so when we're thinking about Buddhism, and again, this is what I teach, I'm teaching class right now on Buddhism in South Asia. There are obviously a lot of resources. A lot of people in different places have different ideas about what Buddhism means. Dr. Ambedkar has a lot of inspiration from different sources. One important source that I think is valuable to recognize is he read a lot of Western scholarship. He was not only going to ancient Buddhist texts, and not only talking with Buddhists in Sri Lanka and Burma, Myanmar, and Nepal. He was also reading a lot of Western scholarship, and his way of thinking about Buddhism was a very modern way. My students have noted this in regular classes right now, that Dr. Ambedkar is very willing to think about the tradition critically. This is kind of extraordinary for people within the community. They don't maybe take this for granted. Of course, this is Buddhism. But in the larger Buddhist worlds, there's something different here. And this is actually a good thing. It's an opportunity, as I'll say here a little bit in the future. I'd like to point out sort of rationalist, scientific, Buddhist modernism. That Dr. Ambedkar, as he's thinking about Buddhism, about this world, not about heavens and hells, not about rebirth, it's this world right now. This is a kind of a different trend. It's something really important to appreciate. So, also thinking about where you all are, and the larger scheme of the Ambedkarite migration, especially for labor. So these are, like we're thinking, people migrate as refugees, sometimes they migrate as people who don't have a whole lot of skills, and they're trying to find anything. The migration of Ambedkarites around the world is of people who are very highly educated, following Dr. Ambedkar's advice. So in the 1950s onwards, Punjabis, especially workers, factory workers, steel mill workers, people who did not have high levels of education came to the UK, and they established a community there. Eventually, in the 1970s, there were some mass conversion movements in the UK, where Punjabis converted to Ambedkarite Buddhism, and so now we have a community there. As you know, since the 1990s, there are a few people earlier than this, but especially the 90s onwards, Maharashtrian professionals have been migrating around the world. some people have had ONSEF background, so they've been trained to organize people and think about how to speak publicly and bring people together. And I've noticed, especially in Dubai, in Japan, in a number of other places, these people are very active in how do we bring the community together. This is a hard thing to do. Not everybody has this sort of background skill. You just don't assemble people. You have to think about how do you bring them together. ONSEF can help with that. And as people move around the world, increasingly we find Ambedkar now from Maharashtra. And so this also in diaspora starts to raise some different questions that were raised in India. So this is what I've traced in terms of migration. So moving to a number of different places, and this isn't all of them, there are more than this, but this sort of gives you the sense very quickly, this is a global movement. And as a number of you have actually yourselves have experienced, you've been in multiple places. When I moved up here, to Ambedkar, I started in 2015. One of my first contacts was Mahesh Vasni and Kupri Vasni. And I was starting to get to know Mahesh, and I started asking him, just sort of off the record, asking, what sort of languages do you speak? And he said, well, Indian English and Japanese. Japanese? Why would you speak Japanese? That's a strange language, just something to pick up. And he said, well, I lived in Japan. I was like, now, this is a global thing. People moving around multiple times. It's changing the movement. There's something, a movement, not only a social movement physically of people. So, we have communities now, as you know, in a lot of places. Many of you know people in these places. And Dr. Ambedkar, this is an installation of a statue. I visited this last summer in Koyasan, Japan. The head of one of the Buddhist organizations in Japanese Buddhism. So, this has become a pilgrimage site there. This is, to my knowledge, the only vihara outside of India that was built specifically for Ambedkarite Buddhists. Ambedkarite Buddhists go to a lot of different viharas, but this is the only one specifically for them in Wolverhampton. So these are Punjabis. They have a weekly Punjabi service. They also have, in this building back in there, they have a TV studio. So if you can speak Punjabi, go look up Lotus TV online and you'll see their regular broadcasts. You can find an interview with me actually, or with them, in Punjabi. I'm hoping that they were saying what they told me they were saying, because I don't speak Punjabi, but that was there. This is an article, book. This is actually two sides of the same book. You can read Arabic from the other side, and so in English and Arabic. So as people go to even to different cultures, different places, they have different challenges. They meet different people. They have to adjust to different conditions as they are pursuing their jobs, as their children are getting education, as you all know. And this has led to a number of different geographical particularities. You're here out of the Detroit area, the Great Lakes region. That's one particularity. If you're in California, that's a little bit different in the U.S. But it's very different if you're in the UK, where you're interacting. Maharashtrians interacting with Punjabis. That's kind of a different thing. You interact with a lot of Punjabis here? A lot of Punjabi Ambedkarites? No, there aren't any around. That's a different history. So it's a different kind of conversation that evolves. You don't have, well, you do actually have in some places, Ravidasans. As part of the anti-caste movement, people get involved. In the UK, it's much more vivid because there's just more Punjabis around. If you're in the Gulf countries, you have to be very careful how you speak about religion publicly. And so Dr. Ambedkar in Buddhism, they have to modulate that. I think that's part of why the significance of Dr. Ambedkar is the title of this and not Dr. Ambedkar's Buddhism. Because if the word Buddhism in the title, this would start to become under surveillance by the different countries, so people have to be careful. So a number of different things, but that's actually just background. What we're really wanting to talk to you today is about fraternity. And I'm talking so much, I'm very conscious of. There's no one here shortly. I'm a professor, it's become very easy for me to sort of I'll try to control it. But this is really interesting, it's exciting. Right? I think Dr. Ambedkar is a very innovative thinker. He's doing something very interesting, and as you can see, if you watch sort of publications, in the past 10, 15 years, he has become a very big topic. People looking to him as a political theorist, looking at how we organize society. Buddhism, not so much just because of the history of Buddhist studies, that's always been more texts, ancient languages and things, but this is changing. So I'd like to look at two uses of the word fraternity. So this, I'm going to show some examples from his writing. This will be a little academic, hope you're all able to follow this. It's like not too, yeah, happy to be out of school for too long. Yeah, so from the annihilation of caste, this is fraternity, which is only another name for democracy. Democracy is not merely a form of government, it's primarily a mode of associated living, of conjoint communicated experience. It is essentially an attitude of respect and reverence towards fellow men. Thinking this earlier, good of English, fellow people, right? So people interacting with each other. Democracy. From the preamble of the Constitution, we the people of India having solemnly resolved the Constitution of India is a sovereign and socialist, secular, democratic republic, serving all its citizens, justice, liberty, equality, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. There's the word fraternity again. In the debate about the Constitution from Dr. Ambedkar, what does fraternity mean? Fraternity means the sense of common brotherhood of all Indians, of Indians being one people. It is the principle which gives unity and solidarity to social life. It is a difficult thing to achieve. Dr. Ambedkar is pretty clear. This is, you can have the idea, but actually doing it in practice is very hard. I'd like to pass it on about some in relation to Buddhism.
So we saw that the first set of definition that Dr. Ambedkar was giving about fraternity, he was trying to envision the notion of fraternity in more secular and also national entity to build the nation. But as I said from my story, if you come on the second set of his understanding of fraternity, he knew that it's difficult to build because the opposite of fraternity, which is disunity, is deeply rooted in his own culture. And he wanted to root out those cultural conditioning among people so that they re-envision the social, political, cultural, and also religious understanding what Dr. Ambedkar wanted to achieve. So here we come with his sort of the much deeper, if I say so, spiritual side of fraternity, which of course comes through the teachings of the Buddha, where he says that what sustains equality and liberty is fellow feeling. It can't be just a mere abstract idea. You have to have a feeling for it, which is a French revolution called fraternity. The word fraternity is not an adequate expression. The proper term is what we have called mentally. So, Baba said that fraternity is not equipped word to imagine the democracy I wanted to build in this country, in the sense in India. He said I have to borrow the vocab word from the Buddha's vocab called mighty. So he anchored that project into a very fundamental humanistic spiritual values. And you see those connections step back into what Dr. Ambedkar quotes in his own writing, that when King Bimbisara said that I take refuge, Lord, in the blessed one and in the Dhamma, as Panditji was trying to guide us, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So the Sangha, he all the time refers to Buddhism as a fraternity of bhikkhus. He uses that word quite consciously, I think, the fraternity of bhikkhus, because he enunciates that's the model of new society. We are blessed upon receiving from this therefore, as a lady said, who has taken refuge in him. Therefore, what fraternity is, it is nothing but the another name of brotherhood of men. Mine is old English. So when he is using the men and brotherhood, what he meant as a humanity, men or man, that's old English usage of humanity, which generally we don't use in academic practices, but I don't think our service addressing to one particular gender. So please keep that in mind. I have to highlight it, especially in this country when I talk about Dr. Ambedkar, because gender issues are quite sensitive, and Dr. Ambedkar is one of the greatest feminists that probably you might know come across. So that's what he says, that Buddha preached the Dhamma is a morality and as a standard, and so is the morality. So relate fraternity, look at the flow of ideas in one statement, where reading quotation is not enough when we talk about Dr. Ambedkar. The flow of ideas starts with fraternity, goes with the humanity, goes with the morality. Because if I have a social morality based on inequality, that will divide the country. And that is not integrating the country or any society. And therefore, he models that in the grammar, polygrammar policy, he wrote, Sangha, he translated as the assembly of Buddha, the fraternity of peace.
So there are two scopes of fraternity. Fraternity here is pointing in a couple different directions. You've seen the first set that I was talking about and the second set that Dr. Rupp was talking about. Fraternity is related, but they're going in somewhat different directions. It's important to, I think, appreciate this. The scope in which he's referring to Buddhism, in the first set especially, is the Indian nation. As the Indian nation gets started, we need to have fraternity to overcome caste prejudice, inequality. We need to have some sense that binds people together as shared citizens to have one nation. What this is doing is actually not really different than in the French Constitution or the American Constitution. This use of the word fraternity, specifically, you can find in a lot of constitutions. This is not unique to India. This isn't unique to Dr. Ambedkar's use of the word fraternity. He's inherited this from this sort of larger global discourse. What's different is where he uses it in Buddhism, and he maps this on. You want to say a bit more about this?
Yeah, I think it's not a political concept for him. Therefore, also there are a lot of debates that Buddhism is a political movement. Buddhism was a political conversion. Well, of course, it's a political statement in the sense of bringing equality and fraternity. But then he equates that with the Buddha's teaching Maitri vis-a-vis the Brahmanical idea of relating each other on the basis of which caste or class or the status you are born. And that is the frequent English translation of Sangha that Dr. Ambedkar uses. And it's extremely important, really, fraternity, brotherhood, and morality, and the uses of sacred. I will just explain that one sentence. What is sacred here? Dr. Ambedkar unfolds morality at two levels. First is sacred, second is universal. What is sacred? Sacred, if you Pavitrata, the word we use, is not the ritualistic unity is referring to. Sacred means no self. If you do not have my caste self or recognizing too much with your caste, and you become casteless mind, that is sacred for you. And once you become sacred, only then you can become universal. Otherwise, you will carry that identity all across, or every Indian will carry their caste identity all across wherever they travel. That wouldn't be universal. Therefore, you see, even related back to Vishwara studies, you don't have that universal fraternity. And that's what Dr. Ambedkar is hinting when he's talking morality is sacred, and therefore it has to be universal.
One thing I think that I find, and I'm always highlighting for my students, is that the words that Dr. Ambedkar uses, we've got a cross-cultural translation going on, that's always a challenge. But Dr. Ambedkar is doing something, I think, that is so new and different, that he's using words in ways that the words didn't traditionally mean them. So the words are always trying to point us somewhere, but they're not perfect words. Like our language is limited. So even our thoughts are limited. He's trying to point in a direction that he doesn't entirely have the words for. So the sacred, the notion of sacred, we can take it in a very religious sense, in a very practical sense. Sacred means something special. Special and highly elevated, and that's what we respect ultimately. And I think in that sense of sacred, can be something that holds people together. But these words, all of even Dr. Ambedkar's words, I think in reading Dr. Ambedkar, I very much appreciate he's always saying ask questions, be critical, be rational. I don't think he would say, let my words take my word for it, don't think about me, just accept it. He's not doing that. All of the words that he's using in the 1950s, which is not now, have to be rethought, and they have to be applied in new ways, especially in diaspora, which is different than in Indian context. So, in the context of the Indian nation, Dr. Ambedkar talks about India becoming Prabhupada Bharat, right, awakened India, and a sense of a new nationality, of people coming together as fellow citizens. And then there's the question, well, what is the role of Buddhism in Prabhupada Bharat? Does this mean that all Indians are supposed to convert to Buddhism? That's sort of an uncomfortable question. You can see why a lot of people would have some reservations about that and not feel entirely enthused. What does Buddhism here mean? For especially people coming out of background in Maharashtra, especially from our background, it's a little bit easier to convert because there's so many people done. From other communities, this is a bigger challenge. So, the future role of Buddhism, that's a question. In India, if you're only thinking in the context of Indian politics, then Buddhism is enmeshed in Indian politics in a very particular way, as Dr. Rao mentioned, with the Republican Party of India, with politicians. It has to be mapped on that. But if you're outside India, what do you do with Prabhupada Bharat? Are you then oriented to creating Prabhupada Bharat in India even though you're not there? That could be a possibility. Or, if you're thinking about being Prabhupada nationhood in, say, the US, should we have Prabhupada America? Do Americans all need to convert to Buddhism? I don't think that's what Ambedkar was quite thinking either. I don't know, maybe he was, but I'm kind of inclined to think that probably is the direction. Here in the US, in terms of experiencing being an ethnic minority among a lot of other people, practicing other religions, this is a very different scene, obviously, than India. And so, there's some challenges here. I'm quite sure why our professional audio is sort of always standing there in the middle. But there's some challenges here. These are the ones that I see. And we have had a lot of conversations over the past several years, coming from different backgrounds, seeing different things, and I think hopefully you certainly always like me. The conversation is very helpful because we have different perspectives. These are just things I see. If you disagree with them, you're entirely welcome. And, please correct me afterwards. These are some of my perceptions. One big thing among Ambedkar Buddhists right now, Ambedkarite Buddhists, is grappling with the fact that traditionally, Ambedkarite Buddhists are by and large Mahars from Maharashtra, and the real strength is probably safe to say from Gujarat and from the Nagpur area. When I've been moving around and interviewing Ambedkarites in Japan, Dubai, and other places, and I ask people where they're from, I would say at least 80% of the people I meet are from Gujarat. And Dr. Ralston introduced me to this term Jati Party. That not only are they from Nagpur, but even more strongly than that, they're from this sort of area east of Nagpur, which is not like the scholars that I talk to, nobody's ever heard the term Jati Party. But there's an extra dimension here to the strength of the movement. It comes from somewhere. That's a good thing, nothing wrong with that, but it represents sociologically a center. Another big question, who are Ambedkarite authorities? What is the relationship of traditional monastic sanghas with Ambedkarite authorities who aren't all monks and nuns? This is an open question. Dr. Ambedkar was not a monk, so what do we do with that? That's a question. Another big thing that directly relates to your lives is the diaspora experience. So it's the experience of having a community and language and background which is in a minority group in a larger context where you have other people doing completely other things, many of whom have no idea about India at all. You're always communicating like what you're about, and people ask you, well, what do you think? What do you believe? What do you think? What food do you eat? Things like that. And as you're all experiencing, many of you experiencing, there is a big gender gap. A generational gap. So coming from India, having grown up there, having ideas about what it means to be Ambedkarite and Buddhist, and then children growing up here are two really different worlds. And that happens here. The reason I show this image here is this is in Japan, in the Hamachakra Argentina. And so they had two hosts for this. One boy was speaking in English, the other boy was speaking fluent Japanese. He announced everything in Japanese. And so there are now Ambedkarite children, some of whom go to Japanese schools, are now in Japanese colleges, who think of themselves as Japanese. That is the first term they think of themselves as, not Indian. This generational difference is going to change, and I'm sure you've seen it. It's inevitable. This is not something to sort of like feel sad about, something that's gotten lost. This is an inevitable change. So how Ambedkar Buddhism is going to fit with that? Big question.
So that's the first step of challenge. I think it's so important when we talk about Ambedkar and Buddhism or even caste in general outside India. These are the challenges because we need to be consciously aware of that. Not just aware of that, but how we are going to address that, how we are going to face it. So, again, if I refer back to the mention of last Ambedkar speech about fraternity and also about indifferentism. Indifferentism is the worst kind of disease that can infect people. Because immediately, like as John Lee rightly pointed out, rightly pointed out, tendency of mutualism or sectarian or like Punjabis, and they are also right. But the interaction and the problem that Dr. Ambedkar was trying to highlight is a factionalism, the divides that are in the community. Dr. Ambedkar see that as a foremost challenge to establish fraternity. But it not only highlights the problem, he always is a fantastic and unique thinker. He questions, he highlights problem, and then he gives solution. That's the Buddhist sort of method Dr. Ambedkar adopts in his writing, speeches, everywhere in his life. So we see that as a precept we have taken, Panchashilas, Panathpada, Vedamani, and so on and so forth, is the foundation. And he says that he see as a positive sympathy. What do we understand by positive sympathy when Dr. Ambedkar uses that expression in the context of factionalism and fraternity? He is evoking, as he expresses, the positive sympathy. What does that mean? Means wherever there is goodwill, wherever there is love that blesses everyone, it's our responsibility to respond to that, to accommodate that in terms of our fluidity or flexibility or adaptability, and to achieve and have the common goal in our mind, where he refers that expression, reformation of the world cannot be done unless we reform our own mind. That is with them Karmas. But he was speaking to the Buddhist countries who were in the swing of a lot of leftist communist revolution, idea of revolution in Kathmandu. He was not addressing the Dalits, he was not addressing the untouchables or any Indians. Therefore, he evokes that spirit of positive sympathy with all good that happens. Like I just came from Princeton 3 days ago. I was talking to black Buddhists, and they were trying to understand how Dr. Ambedkar have adopted Buddhist values to emancipate untouchables or caste oppressed people. How black Buddhists would understand the Buddhism I am speaking. It's easy for me to speak with you. How can I translate that to not just black, white communities or other progressive thinkers and communities who care for world's fraternal spirit or the spirit of love? Christianity speaks a lot about language of love. How do I understand that? I think that's where Dr. Ambedkar tried to form solidarity, better solidarity, where this community or probably these people carry that responsibility to translate Dr. Ambedkar with the values and the methods that Dr. Ambedkar used, not to reduce down him as a liberator of Dalits or a particular caste and communities, not to just individual but for all. Otherwise, there is a danger between Moksha and Martyrs that Dr. Ambedkar is trying to frame the world.
So, I would say there are some opportunities. Many times when I talk with Ambedkarite groups, they're very often kind of focused on the challenges. There are definitely challenges, lots of them. But there are some opportunities that I'm not sure that I've heard a lot of Ambedkarites really fully recognize. There's some genuine opportunities opportunities that Dr. Ambedkar kind of gave that kind of all push him in a different position than most of the Buddhists in the world. So there is, because Dr. Ambedkar, we can also say it would be a wonderful thing if Dr. Ambedkar lived longer than 7 weeks after conversion, and he had written more about Buddhism and had more time to be a leader. And that's certainly true, but because there is not a very strong organization of what it means to be Ambedkarite Buddhist, there is also not a sense of confinement. Organizations provide direction, and that's good, but organizations also end up putting limits on what people do. And it strikes me that right now the Ambedkarite movement, looking sociologically, so I studied religion, a lot of different countries, different contexts, different traditions, and there is this sort of window of time when a new tradition is formed, when it's still relatively flexible, and people can explore, and they can think of new ideas, and they can start to go in new directions. That window will close. And people will start to become more sort of hard line and say, no, it's exactly what it means to be Buddhist is exactly this and not that. And then it becomes even a little bit oppressive. Right now, Ambedkarite Buddhists are in that window of opportunity. So that's something kind of sociologically unique. This is not going to last very long. Ambedkarites today, I would say, are not exactly bound by tradition. Dr. Ambedkar wasn't bound by tradition. He was able to think very creatively and critically. If he had been living in Thailand, or in Sri Lanka, or Vietnam, or maybe Taiwan or China or Japan, where there was a lot of Buddhism around, and there was a very clear Sangha, and there were people who had monasteries, and so there was a flow of income, and they wanted to protect their authority and protect their property and protect all these things. If Dr. Ambedkar had come up with his ideas in these places, imagine what that might have been like. I think he would have been shut down and said, no, this isn't real Buddhism. You've got it all wrong. You're thinking about it. This is not, you're not being traditional. And they would have said, stop. But because he was in central India, he had the freedom to do this. And it strikes me that you have the freedom also to do this. To be thinking about what is Buddhism for you without a whole lot of oppressive structure telling you what you need to believe and what you need to think. This is pretty liberating. And when it comes to religion, this is rather unique. Ambedkar's Buddhism is also a vision for social democracy. It's turned towards society. He's talking immediately on modern terms in a way that in more traditional Buddhist countries, they didn't get to do because it had this weight of old language. Ambedkar has just started with modern language. It started with social democracy and liberty, equality, and fraternity. That's where you start. A lot of Buddhists have to spend a lot of time thinking about, well, how could we possibly, calculate all these ancient things that we're used to saying and bring that into modern terms? Ambedkar just started with that. I think that also is very unique. Transnational communities can feed back into India, so people with having connections abroad, living abroad, often come into greater resources. So this is also something that the Ambedkarite community is experiencing now. In some ways, I think this could serve as a model for Ambedkarite communities in India, both in the sense that as people live abroad and have different interactions with Ambedkarites who are not of Maharashtrian background, this is challenging people to come up with new ideas about what does it mean to be, if it's not necessarily only Marathi and Maharashtra. What can Ambedkarite Buddhism look like in a bigger world? Or Ambedkarite Buddhist in non-Buddhist relations. This happens in a bigger context, in a much more vibrant way, I think outside of India than inside, because of the way that the tradition is sort of formed in India.
I hope you got the chance to people sort of reflection on that slide, what is trying to communicate. Because Dr. Ambedkar did not have a burden of tradition and the monastic values. Actually, reviving Buddhism in Sri Lanka is not possible. In Thailand, it's not possible. In China or Taiwan, where all established traditions are there, it's not possible. Thank you very much for bringing that so articulately. Nonetheless, did Dr.
I have a doubt. I have a question. Can I ask him?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Please hold that. We have space for that. We are almost there. Yeah. Did Dr. Ambedkar French or not? That's the big question. And the parameters that Professor Kuhn was trying to say, how they are going to applicable or not applicable to Ambedkar and this community, that's a big question. I was talking the other day with Vivek Dada, and he was exploring his experiences, how he works here, how his life sort of unfolds across the water in the United States. And Professor Kuhn very sort of, he gave example. Probably that's the one of this leadership of London. I'm not in the role. Yes, I'm Maitri Nagarjun, and I don't carry a role. How community is going to look up to their own teachers, or spiritual teachers like the late admonishment model in Sri Lanka, or in Taiwan, or in Zen known as masterly tradition. That relationship yet to develop in the Ambedkar Buddhist community. Nonetheless, Dr. Ambedkar said that yes, he was deeply spiritual person, he was deeply Buddhist person in his heart, if I may say so. He follows Santa tradition, Kabir and all. So there are a lot of unifying factors Dr. Ambedkar tried to synthesize, to present Buddhism to the modern world. As far as my experience, I can speak from that. I'm engaged with Nagloka in past 20 years. There are initial years, yes, a lot of Mahan students, boys and girls used to come, but now immediately we change those policies and try to accommodate young and the activists from north, east, west, south, north, east, and also some from Nepal, and some students stay there or across Buddhist countries. And now a lot of Western young scholars and Buddhists are trying to understand what Nagloka is trying to do. I think that's where the post-conversion movement or after replacing Buddhism, we are in a formation process. How Buddhism for this new Buddhist community would look like. What are their practices? Who are their spiritual leaders? How they should talk about Buddhism. Nagloka is only example. There can be many models like the Educational Institute, non-profit communities. They are sort of progressing and growing, but at the same time trying to put across the Buddhist message that Dr. Ambedkar is trying to communicate. So that's the I meant by Buddha. That's what I meant by Dhamma and Sangha, Shila, and Four Noble Truths, idea of dukkha. It's a big, huge topic which we do not have time to go into. But that's where the liberatory model that Dr. Ambedkar tried to anchor in the teachings of the Buddha based on modern circumstances and situations.
So, we would like to now, this is going to be an interactive session.
Now that's
Now it's your turn.
yeah, our part is over. Now it's your part.
Now we've got questions for you, so we are going to take questions later, so hold on that question definitely.
Okay.
Yes, but, so we're going to ask you at this point to break into some small groups, just the people around you. Ideally, at least 4 people, so if you're going to get together with some other people. So the first question we'd like you to consider, let's maybe take 5 minutes. And you can talk among yourselves, and then we'll come back to a large group, see if people have some ideas, have a little more conversation. First question, what does fraternity mean for diaspora Ambedkarites now? Meaning you. What does fraternity mean for you? Let's take 5 minutes, take some time, get to know each other, give us a break.
So what we are going to do, so we have 3 questions, 3 slides. I think what we are going to do, we have 3 questions. So we will change our slides, but you keep talking, but change your conversation as we sort of try to let you know that now discuss this question, right? And after that exercise, with 3 questions you do, then you please ask questions or share what you want to share. That's your goal. come close those who are under their own, yeah, so that we form a group and talk to each other. Thank you. So what is strategy mean for diaspora Ambedkar Islam?
No, I think that is not what the question is. What the strategy is for diaspora Ambedkar. Just look at we are Ambedkar diaspora. What I was bringing some of the idea of particular I mean, like that is kind of from here. Don't know much of the
That's
how we transform these attitudes from our that is why I initiated.
So I know that there's a lot of conversation going on, and I'm sorry to interrupt, this is always what happens. So some small possibly come back together as a big group. If maybe there's 3 different things that people pointed out, and then we'll transition to another question. Does that work?
Yeah.
Somebody feels pretty brave volunteering, something they found kind of inspiring, or something that they found was interesting in their conversations. You want to? Can you speak loudly or you're not actually?
Hello everyone. So we were just talking about what is fraternity in diaspora and community. So we were thinking about that we as a community in the US, particularly in Michigan, we come together and celebrate all the festivals like Baba Saheb Jayanti or Women's Day. So when we come here, we see that connectedness in our community. That is main thing for us as a fraternity. How that can be transformed to the other communities, that is another thing. But we think that coming together and celebrating the shared values and shared goals for as a community and good for the vision, the vision for our Ambedkar community and to this community. That is what we are thinking as a fraternity.
Great, thank you. So one thing I'm hearing is these events. People come together for a giant meeting, go to a part meeting. Yeah. So that's one element of fraternity. One sort of very tangible way we see it. Another volunteer to say something. Everybody volunteered something else. Nice. That's an exciting. Somebody who really say something.
I think fraternity for passing to our young kids. I know they are born and brought up in the US. The first thought that comes to their mind is, I am a US citizen. But how can we let them know, okay, you are a US citizen, but we meet as a community together, right? We have events, we talk about it. And for example, today we were going to this event. My daughter asked, Mommy, where are we going? So I said her, oh, we are celebrating Dr. Ambedkar's birthday. Who is him? So that's how we are passing our knowledge to him. So they understand, though we are living in a country here, but we have our roots tied by our parents and family and friends for them to go and learn about them. Thank you.
So yeah, the events give you a chance to talk with your children and communicate this intergenerational. We have maybe one more, and then we'll go on to the next question.
I will add, so everyone, I will add just a couple of comments what the US taught me and how that relates to fraternity. It is not exactly Ambedkar as well, but the US teaching. So one thing is equality and respect. And in India, you will see the class barrier, like the people who are at the good post, higher post, they do not equally value the lesser class people, cleaning staff and all those. In US, you will see they are very respectfully, treated respectfully and with equal status. So if you go to schools, the janitors in the schools are treated very well with respect, with equal level. So that's one I have noticed as a pattern in today's time.
Great, thank you. Shall we go on to the next slide? So the next question. What can Ambedkarites do locally right now to nurture fraternity? This could be in the sense, especially as Dr. Ambedkar mentioned it, of Maitri and mutual care for each other's well-being. What can Ambedkarites do right now? Not necessarily but it's in your lives here. And here are some possible kind of directions for thinking about what this might look like. Like you're welcome to take this wherever it is, wherever you want to go. Let's take another 5 minutes and have another session. small discussion.
Then we later.
So in the interest of time, anything you want to share?
Question was about how the guy where this community and also all of us community. Yeah, so what I think one most important thing is the wisdom, right? Each one should have wisdom. If he has wisdom, he can make his own decision. Because we have seen many people who live with a lot of blind faith, and then that also able to come to that point, okay, that they need to have this kind of weapon to solve all those issues that they are facing in their life. So wisdom is important.
So this question can be broken down into two parts. The first is what currently we are doing, so that is one. And second is, are we doing enough? And how can we do better? So what we are currently doing, we already have like various organizations, ANA, and so many others. We also have professional organizations. We also have student-centric organizations. We also have day back to society model where we try to day back to society back in India. So lot of these models exist. Now the question is it enough? The short answer is no. Definitely it is not enough, and we should strive to be better. And what are the ways we can be better? One of the ways is following Sadhana, following Patrician, so that it can be a model behavior, which can be seen by others, and then probably it will come to the. So that is one, the model behavior. Second, what exactly meaning by breaking down barriers? As a first generation immigrant, I might have we will be pretty much everyone will be in a professional field. So is breaking down to the those barriers, professional barriers, moving to the next one. That could be one, or maybe a student getting into a settle down. That could be one. And practicing democracy to maybe having internal democracy. Sangha, following the Sangha model.
Anything from this side?
Thank you very much. I have two questions. So first,
Stay on this one, right?
oh, yeah. Oh, from here? Yeah, please connect. Oh, other question later? Okay, then I will.
So, we have a very famous slogan from Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar is the person is also a kind of basic thing that we can be there for the person within for our well-being. If anything happens, we can come together for the person. So I think basic things start from let's be there. Thank you.
So let's move on to the final question for discussion. What roles should or could Buddhism have in Ambedkarite style fraternity? I imagine this is tough. Maybe it's not tough for you, but it's tough to my imagination. Just because how Dr. Ambedkar talked about Buddhism in so many different ways, as religion, moral order, social vision, something else, like all the words we use are never quite adequate for what we want to do. And what should Buddhism look like for Ambedkarites? I think in this room, I'm not entirely sure, I don't mean to marginalize anybody if I'm wrong, but I think most people are Buddhist. That's generally safe to say. So that sets the conversation in a certain direction. And that's great. If we were in a different place, like I gave a talk in Belgium back in November, and there were quite a few people of OBC background, not Buddhist. And then the conversation has a different context, because for them, if they're not Buddhist, then this lights up in a different way. But yeah, what role should Buddhism have in our Ambedkarite fraternity, whatever you feel Buddhism represents, whatever you feel it means? Make sense? Good to go? Okay, maybe another 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think more about the night. I think that one is that very much. I think we can see more about the
Let's come back together again this evening. We have a very eager volunteer out here. I'm sure that should get you those scores.
Hello, my name is Animesh, and to me, the role of Buddhism and Ambedkar fraternity is that we are not only inclusive of our own ideas, like our beliefs, but we are also inclusive of other people's ideas. So we don't discriminate against other people's beliefs. We accept them for who they are, and we also value their opinion.
Yeah, I think adding on to Amish's point, like we're open and we're getting views and mindsets of other people's and other communities, and that helps us enhance our views and also think more progressively, and it helps us change and develop as a society and as a community, and so that we can
Thank you. Good.
So, the role of Buddhism and the correct fraternity, we are actually want to give some examples about including the non-Buddhist people. We give the example of when we